The Battle of Abu Tellul was fought on 14 July 1918 during the Sinai and Palestine campaign of World War I, after German and Ottoman Empire forces attacked the British Empire garrison in the Jordan Valley. The valley had been occupied by the Egyptian Expeditionary Force from February 1918 when Jericho was captured, following two raids east of the River Jordan by the EEF, the first in March and second in April. The defense of the valley became the responsibility of the Desert Mounted Corps. A German and Ottoman force attacked the Australian light horse units defending the heights at Mussallabeh and Abu Tellul on the edge of the Judean Hills, while a German force attacked those defending the Wadi Mellaha midway between Abu Tellul and the Jordan River. As these attacks were taking place on the western bank of the river, on the eastern side the Ottoman Caucasus Cavalry Brigade deployed 2 regiments to attack the bridgeheads at the fords of El Hinu and Makad at Hijla. However, the Ottoman formation was overwhelmed by a combined force of British and Indian troops before it could launch its attack. These were the last attacks against the British forces in this campaign. Background: military situation. Abu Tellul was a strategically important ridge located near the west bank of the Jordan River which, together with another ridge to the north called Mussallabeh, formed a salient in the British defensive line in the Jordan Valley. A number of defensive posts were constructed by the Australian and New Zealand garrison which were often between 400 yards and 1,000 yards apart, consisting of either dug or built-up stone sangars, while the ravines in between were covered with barbed wire. The British artillery batteries were concealed close behind the front line just south of the ridge. El Mussallabeh had been attacked on the 11th of April between the 1st and 2nd Transjordan raids. The attack had been launched by a composite force of 4 Ottoman infantry battalions and several batteries. Subsequently, defensive work was carried out. From early May, when the withdrawal of the forces involved in the Second Transjordan attack was complete, the occupation of the Jordan Valley by the Egyptian Expeditionary Force was unchallenged, except for the attacks on the 14th of July and shelling by long-range Ottoman and German artillery. The Ottoman and German attack occurred on the front line protecting the garrison in the valley, the main focus being a salient in the wilderness to the north-northwest of the Wadi Mellaha on the western side of the Jordan River. They sought to cut off the British force in the Jordan Valley from the infantry holding the front line in the Judean Hills by creating a wedge between the infantry and the mounted force in the valley. Such an action would, if successful, have destabilized British control of the Jordan and Dead Sea area, effectively ending the threat of a third Transjordan attack by pushing Lieutenant General Harry Chauvel's forces back out of the Jordan Valley. If the attack succeeded, the front line stretching from the Mediterranean Sea would have been considerably shortened and potentially destabilized. The Ottoman 8th Army defending the coastal sector, the 7th Army defending the Judean Hills and the 4th Army defending the east would have been able to strengthen their considerably shorter line to threaten General Edmund Allenby's right flank, making the attacks in September at Megiddo very difficult, if not virtually impossible. Deterioration of German-Ottoman relations. Bad feelings between the two allies arose when it was believed by sections of the Ottoman army in Palestine that some German units had been withdrawn and sent to the Caucasus. In fact, no units of the Ottoman army were withdrawn from Palestine to support the Transcaucasian campaigns. 1 infantry division and an infantry regiment were sent to eastern Anatolia in 1918 but from Constantinople. Indeed, considerable reinforcements arrived in Palestine from Caucasia in 1918, including the 2nd Caucasian Cavalry Division and the 37th Division. The cordial relations developed between Ottomans and Germans during 3 years of war in the Sinai and Palestine were, however, seriously undermined in May 1918 when Enver Pasha violated the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and aggressively expanded the Ottoman presence in Georgia. Prelude. Attacking force. The force consisted of the German 702nd and 703rd Battalions with 1 battalion of the 146th Regiment, the Ottoman 24th and 53rd Divisions, 1 company of the 11th Jaeger Regiment, the Ottoman Caucasus Cavalry Brigade 2nd, the Ottoman 32nd, 58th and 163rd Regiments and 2 regiments of 3rd Cavalry Division. Included in this force was a group of 100 Germans who were armed with 42 automatic rifles. Defending force. The Abu Tellul sector was held by 2 regiments of the 1st Light Horse Brigade. The 2nd Light Horse Regiment held 4 posts: Mussallabeh, Mascara, the Bluff, and Vise, while the 3rd Light Horse Regiment held the Vale, View, Vaux, Zur, and Zeiss posts which surrounded the high plateau of Abu Tellul, where the Abu Tellul East and Abu Tellul West posts were separated by a gully. Before the attacks began, the commander of the 3rd Light Horse Regiment was asked if he thought the front line could stop a determined attack at Abu Tellul. The 1st Light Horse Regiment formed the Brigade Reserve. The defense of these Mussallabeh and Abu Tellul positions was supported by the 1/1 of a Stone Nottinghamshire Royal Horse Artillery 1B Battery, Honourable Artillery Company C301 and C303 Howitzer Batteries Division, the 11th Mountain Battery and the Hong Kong Mountain Battery. The British artillery in the sector between the river and the villages of Abu Tellul and Mussallabeh were the 11th Mountain Battery, Royal Garrison Artillery in Hong Kong and Singapore Mountain Battery of the 10th Division. These and other British artillery stationed south of the river also took part in supporting the Australian Light Horse counterattack, which regained all that had initially been lost before the day's end. Hard close-quarter fighting earned battle distinctions for Captain Boyd, Lieutenant McCansh and 2nd Lieutenant Burns. The 2nd Light Horse Brigade held the Wadi Mellaha, which flowed from the north southwards into the Wadi El Arya, some 3,000 yards to the east, approximately halfway between the Abu Tellul, Mussallabeh positions and the Jordan River. The 4th Light Horse Brigade formed part of Corps Reserve south of the Arya, while the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade, armed with 1 Hotchkiss machine gun for every 35 men, was in divisional reserve 6 miles south of Mussallabeh on the Wadi Nu'aymah. The fords on the Jordan River at Makad, Hijla and El Hinnu were held by the Mysore and Hyderabad Lancers, while the Gorari bridgehead was garrisoned by the Alva and Patiala Infantry Battalions and the 14th and 15th Cavalry Brigades of the 2nd Mounted Division. Riding out to attack the massing Ottoman cavalry were the Jodhpur and Mysore Lancers from the 15th Cavalry Brigade, the Poona Horse and the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry from the 14th Cavalry Brigade. By June, work was continuing on the defences and the men worked hard to complete sangars, digging and wiring, although the area was overlooked by the Ottomans and much of the work had to be done at night. Early in July, the 1st Light Horse Regiment was in reserve, while the 2nd and 3rd Light Horse Regiment held Vise and Zeiss posts. On the 13th of July, the section of the front line which passed through the Jordan Valley to the Dead Sea was commanded by Chauvel's Desert Mounted Corps. The Gorari bridgehead and the area of the valley stretching south towards the Dead Sea was held by the 2nd Mounted Division with 2 Indian Infantry Battalions and 1st Battalion, Patiala Infantry of 20th Indian Brigade. while the Australian and New Zealand Mounted Division held the Wadi and Mellaha areas, including the Abu Tellul salient. This salient was difficult to defend, as the posts and sangars were isolated owing to the hilly terrain interspersed by rocky crevasses. Under orders, a series of posts and sangars were constructed at Abu Tellul and Mussallabeh, which were designed for all-round defense. Work to strengthen these defenses included heavily wiring all the posts, which were kept supplied with water, ammunition and food. After a few relatively cool days, around the 7th of August, the temperature began to rise steadily, and it was noticed that the Ottoman forces had increased their activities. In particular, the shelling of Abu Tellul had greatly increased. On the 14th of July, the maximum shade temperature was recorded at 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Battle. The attack commenced with long-range artillery shelling from both sides throughout the night. Then 17 German aircraft bombed the Jordan Valley garrison at 4 o'clock in the morning of Sunday, the 14th of July, causing dozens of casualties. Attack on the Abu Tellul and Mussallabeh salient movements were heard between Vale and View posts defended by the 3rd Light Horse Regiment just after 1 o'clock, when the regimental commander ordered an artillery barrage in front of Vale post. Ottoman artillery also started shelling Mussallabeh and Abu Tellul. This bombardment ceased about 2:30, when the movement of many Ottoman units was again heard by the defenders. These were the German 702nd and 703rd Battalions, 1 company of the 11 Regiment Jaeger Battalion and 1 company of the 146th Regiment. This force was supported on the left by the 32nd Regiment attacking Mussallabeh, and on the right by the 163rd and 58th Regiments facing Abu Tellul, with 2nd Regiment forming a reserve in the rear. At 3:30, the Mussallabeh salient protecting the Wadi Mellaha was attacked by 1,250 Germans in 2.5 battalions. Just before the attack began, the regimental commander of 2nd Light Horse Regiment withdrew his headquarters, located just behind Vale position, which was the first position attacked, narrowly escaping capture to Abu Tellul West, where they established and maintained the position throughout the attack. The 2nd Light Horse Regimental commanding officer observed from his new position on Abu Tellul West just before dawn a large body of troops coming up the hill towards his 12-man post. At first he assumed they were some of his own men retiring from the outer posts, but when they reached the wire and began to cut it, he at once gave the order to open rapid fire. The German battalions forming the center of the attacking force made a considerable advance, circling over the Vale position and across Abu Tellul, establishing a post on Abu Tellul East and then pushing on to eastern side to the bluff, where they occupied a post with the Baxter Khl. Bayudak. This move cut off all the light horse posts advised on Mussallabeh as well as those on the bluff and Abu Tellul East. All were without communication to regimental or brigade headquarters. Despite being isolated, heavily attacked and in a number of cases surrounded, they held their ground. They were able to successfully defend the sangars and posts from whatever direction the attack came. Only the troop at Vale and Maskara posts were forced to retire, while one trench on Mussallabeh was captured for a short period before being retaken, and one sangar on Abu Tellul East held by a troop of the 2nd Light Horse Regiment was captured after all the garrison was killed or wounded. The Germans found themselves caught in numerous crossfires from the front, flank and rear from the mutually supporting defensive positions, while the Ottoman forces deployed on the left and right flanks were unable to strongly support their German attack. On the left of the main attack, the Ottoman 32nd Regiment made a frontal attack on Mussallabeh and captured a post, which was retaken by the defenders shortly after. 3 attempts were made by the left of the attacking force on Mussallabeh, but were driven back each time with heavy loss by well-placed machine gun fire, leaving about 200 dead. The whole position was completely restored and 380 German and about 200 Ottoman prisoners were sent back to headquarters. On the right flank, Ottoman units from the Ottoman 58th Regiment climbed a cliff to attack view post, but a sentry shot the leaders, one of whom must have been carrying incendiary bombs, as he burst into flames. By the light of this human torch, the remaining would-be attackers were shot, and as a result the remaining Ottoman soldiers at the bottom of the cliff did not make another attack. Regardless, the attack by the Ottoman 163rd Regiment on Vark's post continued. Reinforcements. When it was found that the Germans had advanced between the 2nd and 3rd Light Horse Regiments and reached the center of the advanced Light Horse position, the reserve, the 1st Light Horse Regiment, launched a counter-attack at 4:30. When the alarm had first been raised, the commander of the 1st Light Horse Brigade had sent forward one squadron of the Reserve Regiment, with 4 machine guns to reinforce the 2nd Light Horse Regimental headquarters on Abu Tellul West, and at 3:40 sent a 2nd Squadron forward which attacked Abu Tellul East. At the foot of Abu Tellul, an artillery officer found 2 officers and 12 men of the Reserve Regiment of the 1st Light Horse Brigade, who were on the way to counter-attack the bluff, and ordered the battery to fire in support of the assault. The 13-pounder high-explosive shells burst among the rocks of the German position, causing 40 Germans to quickly surrender. These prisoners were disarmed and put in charge of 2 of the Australians, while the counter-attack, now reduced to 7 Australians, moved forward again. Another group of Germans was discovered occupying the end part of Abu Tellul, and again the battery opened fire, and after a few minutes, 6 officers and 80 men surrendered to 7 light horsemen, the 2 groups of prisoners being quickly taken to the rear. While the outer light horse posts had been surrounded, they had all held out and turned the machine guns on the attacking force, and by this stage reinforcements of the 1st Light Horse Regiment and the Wellington Mounted Rifle Regiment were pushing along both sides of the Abu Tellul Ridge to quickly drive out the remainder of their opponents and restore the position. The Germans were caught scattered and disorganized. The light horse posts had prevented them digging in, and they were quickly swept from their position, retreating back into the valley to the north, where they were fired on from Mussallabeh posts. The Germans still held their position at the bluff, as did the Australians, and when at 8 o'clock, the 1st Light Horse Regiment retook the position, just 3 men in the bluff sangers out of 20 remained unwounded, while 100 Germans were captured. Meanwhile, the Ottoman 163rd Regiment's attack on Vark's post continued until they were strongly counter-attacked by the Wellington Mounted Rifle Regiment and driven back, the mounted riflemen capturing 61 prisoners. Attack on the Wadi Mellaha. On the Wadi Mellaha, the Ottomans shelled the 2nd Light Horse Brigade throughout the night. At dawn, 2 German infantry companies from the 146th Regiment and 2 Ottoman battalions were seen at various points along the front digging trench. A troop from the 5th Light Horse Regiment from the 2nd Light Horse Brigade twice left the lines with bombs, attacking a force many times the number. On the first occasion, a large group in front of Star Post near the center of the line was reconnoitered by an officer and 14 men. They got to within 20 yards of a group of about 150 Germans' position, who threatened to completely surround the small group before being attacked by the light horsemen, who captured 15 prisoners. 2 hours later at 8 o'clock, the same officer went forward with 20 men to within bombing covering distance and charged, throwing bombs and bayoneting many of the Ottomans. One officer and 2 light horsemen were slightly wounded, while they killed 25, wounded 30 and captured 30 to 45. The remainder escaping to the rear position 1,000 yards behind. Results of the German and Ottoman infantry attacks. The German and Ottoman attacks on Abu Tellul and Mussallabeh were successfully counter-attacked by the 1st Light Horse Brigade and the Wellington Mounted Rifle Regiment, while the remainder of the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade cleared the country for 1,000 yards in front of the original front line. After 6.5 hours of fierce hand-to-hand fighting at Mussallabeh, Abu Tellul and on the Wadi Mellaha, a total of 425 to 448 prisoners were captured, 358 to 377 of whom were German, while the light horse suffered 108 casualties, 6 machine guns, 42 automatic rifles, 185 rifles and a large quantity of ammunition were captured. In the rear of the attacking force, the Ottoman 3rd Cavalry Division waited in vain for an opportunity to exploit any successes and link up with the attack on Abu Tellul. Ottoman cavalry attack. While the attacks on Mussallabeh and Abu Tellul on the western side of the Jordan River were in progress, an Ottoman cavalry force was seen massing for an attack on the east bank of the river. The cavalry were advancing towards El Hindu Ford, between the Corps.A bridgehead and the Dead Sea. The Jodhpur and Mysore lances from the 15th Cavalry Brigade galloped out from the fords, while the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry and the 34th Prince Albert Victor's own Poona Horse for the 14th Cavalry Brigade moved out from the Corps.A bridgehead to attack the Ottoman cavalry. At 3:30 a squadron of the Jodhpur Lancers crossed the Jordan at the El Hindu Ford and a squadron of the Mysore Lancers crossed at Captured.Hijla to discover the Ottoman cavalry force on a 2-mile-long front with its right flank just north of the Wadi Mellaha, 1.5 miles east of Captured.Hijla. This force, made up of the Ottoman 9th and 11th Cavalry Regiments with one squadron of the 7th Cavalry Regiment from the Caucasus Cavalry Brigade, was advancing towards the El Hindu Ford, the squadrons forming a wide front while one squadron of the 7th Cavalry Regiment was in reserve in the rear. These squadrons attacked the outposts of the 15th Cavalry Brigade on the right of the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry. 2 armoured cars of No. 1 Australian light car patrol supported the Imperial Service Cavalry Brigade in the successful counterattack. At 10:32 squadrons of the Jodhpur Lancers crossed the Jordan River at the El Hindu Ford and moved 2.5 miles east-northeast to a ford over the Wadi Mellaha, which flowed from the east at right angles into the Jordan River at Ain el-Gharaba. Here they were to attack the Ottoman cavalry, while the Mysore Lancers and Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry would be in support. When the 2 squadrons of Jodhpur Lancers were in position south of the Ottoman flank, they charged in extended order 2 horses' lengths apart. As they came under fire, they swung left-handed in column of troops and galloped due north with a machine gun subsection covering this advance. The Jodhpur Lancers' charge crashed into the Ottoman cavalry, spearing a number with the Lancers before advancing to the ford, capturing 50 prisoners and a large number of horses. Here they came under heavy machine gun fire from the right bank of the Wadi Mellaha and suffered 28 casualties out of the 125 men who were in the attack. After seeing the advance of the Jodhpur Lancers, at 13:15 the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry and Mysore Lancers advanced on the Ottoman cavalry, the Mysore Lancers attacking shooting and spearing around 30 Ottoman soldiers before retiring from the open ground to the bank of the Wadi Mellaha. At 14:30 the Puna horse moved out of the Corps.A bridgehead and galloped through shell fire to get in touch with the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, who were deployed in front of Ain el-Gharaba. Here the leading troop attacked straight towards the Ottoman trenches, suffering 6 casualties, and at 17:30 the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry and Puna horse attacked the same position, causing the Ottoman force to withdraw under cover of machine gun fire. The Jodhpur and Mysore lances and the Puna horse, commanded by Major General H. J. M. McAndrew, took 100 prisoners, killing more than 90 Ottomans with the lance, but suffered the loss of 80 troopers. 9 men from the Alva and Patiala infantry defending the Corps.A bridgehead were wounded by artillery fire. The Ottoman prisoners included 6 officers, 4 squadron leaders and 86 other ranks. Casualties. The total losses suffered by the German and Ottoman forces in the hills at Abu Tellul and Mussallabeh, at the Wadi Mellaha, and at the Wadi Ain el-Gharaba defending the fords on the eastern bank of the Jordan, were 540 prisoners and up to 1,000 casualties, while the British Empire forces suffered a total of 189 casualties. Between 14 and 15 July the 4th Light Horse Field Ambulance evacuated a total of 278 men, 85 of whom were wounded and 44 sick. Light horsemen. 24 were wounded lancers, 111 were wounded German prisoners and 14 were wounded Ottoman prisoners. Many casualties came into the 4th Light Horse Field Ambulance soon after the long-range artillery shelling commenced, the numbers increasing when bombing and machine gun attacks by the aircraft followed. Stretcher bearers collected the wounded from the front line and brought them to waiting ambulances, which transported them back to the 10th Division of the field ambulance. At the 10th Division all wounded were attended, receiving emergency treatment from the medical officers and hospital staff before being loaded on the ambulances again by the stretcher bearers and evacuated by road to the casualty clearing stations in Jerusalem. Cars and extra men came from the 2nd Light Horse Field Ambulance to help the 4th Light Horse Field Ambulance's speedy evacuation was of major importance. In the afternoon, German and Ottoman prisoners were brought into the field ambulance, but they had to be separated to stop them fighting and abusing each other. The Germans blamed the Ottomans for letting them down, and the Ottomans hated the Germans for their arrogance and envied their equipment. The Ottomans had practically no equipment, wore ragged clothes and had rags round the feet instead of boots, while the German soldiers were in good uniforms and boots, and the equipment in the haversacks included a supply of quinine for prophylactic use against malaria, as well as water bottles. Aftermath. While the Egyptian Expeditionary Force had successfully demonstrated its attacking abilities at Gaza, Beersheba, Jaffa and Jerusalem, this victory by the Desert-Mounted Corps, Australian Light Horse, British Yeomanry, Indian Lancers and New Zealand Mounted Rifles brigades demonstrated their strength in defense in the face of determined German and Ottoman attacks. This had been the only occasion during the Sinai and Palestine campaign when German infantry attacked as stormtroopers, and Chauvel commented on their crushing defeat, that it might improve the image of Australian troopers in the minds of their detractors, who were many. The defeat was a severe blow to German prestige. German prisoners captured at Abu Tellul claimed they had been betrayed by their Ottoman allies, who should have more strongly supported the flanks. Von Sanders, the commander-in-chief, knew that these same regiments had fought well just a few months before, during the 2 Transjordan attacks in March and April. He later wrote that nothing had occurred to show me so clearly the decline in the fighting capacity of the Turkish troops as the events of the 14th July. An Ottoman artillery attack began at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 16th of July, and the 1st Light Horse Brigade, still in position on Abu Tellul and Mussallabeh, was heavily shelled. Over 1,500 shells were fired at the positions, causing heavy casualties, especially among the horses, who were not well protected against shellfire or bomb attacks. The accuracy of the Ottoman artillery was enhanced by spotter planes and accurate distance observation posts. In the afternoon, when the 3rd Light Horse Brigade moved to relieve the 1st Light Horse Brigade, their advance guard was so heavily shelled that the main body of brigade did not take over until after dark. During the day, gas drills were carried out and funk holes dug. Just 2 months later, on the 19th of September, the Battle of Megiddo, which finished the war in this theater, began.